I'm Mosie Kessler-Zacharias, and I came here from Friends Academy in Locust Valley. I've been an English teacher for 9 years, and what really brought me here was having been in the Klingenstein Summer Institute. So I did the Summer Institute as a fourth-year teacher, moving into my fifth year, and I was right at that point where I was sort of feeling around for other career options. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And I wondered whether a career in independent school teaching would be fulfilling for my whole life. And that's where I was really lucky to have encountered the Summer Institute. And it proved to me that there are like-minded people with similar interests and ambitions who had the same concern about independent school teaching, and I was very lucky to have encountered them, and that really planted the seed for later study at the Klingenstein Center full-time. It's hard to identify a single most rewarding thing about the program because there are so many rewards to having been here, and I'm not even sure I am totally aware of what they all are. I think I will be in the coming year, but certainly what jumps to mind is the Klingenstein Center's interest in and concern for the public good of private education. We were called upon to really consider our choice to be in private school, to be in independent schools, and think about the public good that's served by teaching such a small subset of the country's children. And so for me, that is one of the clearest rewards, is having had a chance to really, really consider that in a rigorous fashion and in a way that's both theoretical and practical. Well, my classes this year were really well aligned with each other, which I just found extremely stimulating because I would move from class to class and actually sort of reflect on what I had heard in the last class. So for example, in a finance class, we might hear about the practical nuts and bolts of a budget's relationship to a school's philosophy or mission, and then in the next class actually talk about hammering out mission in relation to vision and thinking about a school's goal, 20 years down the road for what it wants to become, and then in the next class really think about the marketing of that vision and the prospective customers and how they might really sort of want or not want to buy what we're selling, in a sense. And so all of those things had a really remarkable synergy that I think comes from incredible oversight on the part of the center, and also just sort of very stimulating students and colleagues who really care about making those connections between their classes. A project that I was especially proud of was writing a sort of ethical code for school administrators. That happened in Tom Sobel's class, which was Ethics of School Administration, and I got to work with my peers on creating an ethical code that would actually sort of mean something when the rubber meets the road in a sort of ethical dilemma. And just having to do, it was very, very challenging to have to put together a code that would actually arbitrate in a challenging situation. It wasn't just sort of, we're all going to get along all the time. And it's a document that I will certainly take with me to my next job. My own sort of management style was really born from having worked in Quaker schools, so entirely consensus-based, consensus-driven. And going into a number of different kinds of sort of group work situations that did not necessarily lend themselves ideally to a purely consensus-driven mode of sort of action and execution. One thing I think that has changed in my own leadership is an ability to see a task through a little bit more executively. I am very much sort of consensus building and collaborative in my own nature, and while I think there is certainly a place for that, I've had a lot of opportunities to think about what kinds of leadership best suit certain tasks and projects. So I imagine that my next job I'll be able to say, we only have 15 minutes to do X, Y, or Z, and actually sort of drive an agenda in that fashion in a way that I wasn't prepared to do before this program. I, as a product of independent school education, would not have been such if I had been born 15 years later than I was, because it's doubled in price since my parents sent me to school. And so in 2 schools that I've taught in already, there's a conspicuous lack of a middle class And really the student body populations have been polarized, with a lot of full pay customers and then a lot, or a substantial subset of kids who are sort of funded by financial aid, but there's not a lot in between, and it doesn't seem affordable in a lot of places in the country, if you come from a middle class family, to go to an independent school. And that question has driven a lot of our coursework this year, the question of how do you get that middle class back into private schools. The cohort made the experience. I think Klingenstein is really smart to really plan our coursework so that the cohort members' individual experiences actually come to bear constantly and consistently on the issues that we face. So, for example, I know where all of my colleagues in the cohort have worked and will work and what their goals are. And that has really shaped every project we've done together and every class discussion that we've had. Well, I love teaching journalism, so I feel really well prepared to run a journalism program. That's one of my goals. The Klingenstein Center has really gotten me to think carefully about what education will mean for graduates, 15 years from now, and how it will have been shaped so much by the digital age. And so a passion of mine is teaching journalism to digital natives. And I feel very well prepared to take that on and to be a continuous learner in my own teaching and administration. I'm an English teacher, so I would love to be a department chair and eventually an academic dean. And someday down the road, I hope to be a head of school. My own passions are curricular more than student life. I've done a lot of advising, but really I'm really interested in curricular alignment and vertical alignment of coursework and expectations. I would certainly say to someone who is asking whether they should take a year away from their job and do this, what I have said, which is do it. Absolutely do it. I made the decision to come here in an economically really unpredictable climate. I left a job voluntarily that people were being laid off from, and that was a really fraught decision for me, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I knew I wanted to do Klingenstein, the private school leadership program, since my summer institute experience, and it was just a question of when. I feel like I did it at the right time, and that I will have a store of knowledge to draw upon in my own teaching and leadership, and also an incredible constellation of other people in the profession whose experiences will inform mine for the rest of my career.